common response from partners, I think, is like, oh, I don't know, and instead of trying to get them to know, I just let there be space for him to internally process it. And then he came up with, I need more information. And then he asked the question. Like, all of this got to take place, I believe, because I didn't fill the space to try to get him to have an answer different than the one that he had. Before we begin, I have a favor to ask. Pause for just a second to make sure you're subscribed. If you're ready for honesty, more self-trust, and more peace in your relationships, then you're in the right place. Okay, babes, I got a good one for you today, and I just got to practice it while having my lunch, so it is very much present in my day. And I think the best podcast episodes usually do come from this real-time experience and sharing it all with you. So now today I knew I wanted to record an episode sharing this relationship question that we were exploring in the membership earlier this week, but more and more kind of gets illuminated around the space. Like silent space that often takes place in relationships, and personally, my inherent need to fill the space. And the cool thing that I'm learning about myself and about allowing space to be present is the gifts that come from not filling the space. So I want to take you guys back a few days ago before I get into what happened today. A few days ago, we were exploring this question inside the Codependency Alchemy membership chat. As I've talked about here in previous episodes this season, we're moving through a book called Your Big Leap Year by Gay Hendricks. And it's basically like a prompt or a reflection that gets shared every single day. And I'll share videos or a picture of the page inside of our chat. And this week, one of the questions that was given to us from the book was asking someone, it could be your partner, it could be a parent, it could be a friend, asking them this question: what is something that I could do or say to help you feel more appreciated and treasured? And so I put that prompt in our chat and I told everyone I'm going to go and ask Justin on our walk today. Something else I had noted in the video to members was, also consider the environment that you need to be in order to ask a vulnerable question like this. And for me, I shared with everyone that usually having these types of like intimate, vulnerable conversations, I feel most comfortable and confident asking them when I'm either on a walk with Justin, because it's not this like intense, direct eye to eye sitting across the table moment. We're kind of walking side by side. We're looking forward. There's this forward momentum. It is something where I tend to feel a little bit more safe to ask these kinds of questions. This is just something I've noticed for me. Another time that I feel comfortable or more confident asking is like if we're making dinner together, like if we're working together in the kitchen. Again, it's like there's this thing that we're doing together that that allows us to maybe have this conversation without it being so intense. Like I said, sitting across the table, looking at each other eye to eye, sometimes that's just like too much. So this is just something that I've learned in our own relationship. So later that day, we go for our walk and I share with him, hey, there's this prompt that was shared in the book that I read to the group. I'd love to ask you. And so he consents. I asked him the question, what is something that I could say or do to help you feel more appreciated and treasured? He immediately goes into like treasured ? Like he has an issue with the word or whatever. Like he's like, that's a weird word. And before, like, is kind of neat because like before we broke up, I think I would have taken any criticism like that from him as like this dagger to the heart. Like I would have just, been maybe upset with like his need to criticize the wording of the question. But now I just laughed at it with him. I'm like, yeah, it is an interesting word, treasured. I think it's just more so like what helps you feel appreciated or loved, right? And He responded like I think a lot of partners do, which is like, I don't know, nothing. Like, I feel loved. Like, there's nothing that you could do that, like, I already feel it. And so I said, okay, like, thanks, like, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And I let there be space. Okay. This is what I want today's episode to all be about, is letting there be space. I wanted to fill the space so badly. I always want to fill the space. Like, this is like something that I do, and I'm so curious at how many of you guys also feel the need to fill the space when there is silence. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just because we're walking, who knows why. I don't know why. I just didn't fill it. I just let it be what it was, and I didn't ask more questions, which is sometimes what I'll do, or I'll like explain more just to like see if like explaining it a different way would get him to respond more than what he already did. But I just took his answer for an answer and I let it be. I didn't try to like coerce more out of him or pull more out of him. I just said like, cool, thanks. I'm like, that's good to know. And then we just kept walking and walking and walking. And then he asked a clarifying question. He wanted more details around like what was the question really trying to ask. And so then I shared more information, right? I was like, I think the point is that, we're having these conversations so that, you continue to feel appreciated. So I continue to feel appreciated. And that like there might be things that I do that make you feel really good inside that like I have no idea that you really enjoy or love. And he was like, oh, like when sometimes you'll like make me lunch and like surprise me, and like I love that makes me feel really good. And I was like, oh, okay, perfect, like that's a perfect example. Like I sometimes just make more than I need, or I feel like making you lunch because I have like a lot of time this afternoon. And it's good to know that like when you do that, it feels really, really good for you, like something that helps you feel appreciated. And so then we got to start having this conversation, right? So would that conversation have taken place if I immediately filled the space? And what I'm coming to learn is just the difference between how I process and how Justin processes. I'm an external processor. He's an internal processor. I know I've shared some videos about this on social media, and maybe I've talked about it here on the podcast. I can't quite remember. But it just reminded me that like I asked the question, and even though he didn't have an immediate or he did have an immediate response, right? But it was just like, no, there's nothing. Common response from partners, I think, is like, oh, I don't know, and instead of trying to get them to know, I just let there be space for him to internally process it. And then he came up with, I need more information. And then he asked the question. Like all of this got to take place, I believe, because I didn't fill the space to try to get him to have an answer different than the one that he had. But in that space, and that allowing him to have a moment to actually register it, think about it, he just needed more time. Then we got to have this whole beautiful conversation, like for the rest of our walk. There were more things that he told me that help him feel appreciated. And, I think something I used to do in the past is I would ask him this question with the hopes that he would ask me the question in return. And that was a way that I realized now I was trying to covertly manipulate the situation, because it was like there were things that I maybe wanted to tell him about what I wanted him to do differently. And then I was like, oh, well, if I ask him this question, then he'll ask me that question. And then I can tell him what I want instead of just vulnerably sharing with him. But this particular day, I didn't necessarily care to get asked the question. I was really just thinking about how can I show up and be a partner that helps the person who I love feel appreciated and loved. And with that being the sole agenda, like not trying to, get him to ask me the question so I could share with him what I really was thinking. But he did eventually not right after the conversation. There was like some time that passed. He then asked me the question, what is some things that help you feel loved and appreciated? And I was shocked because I actually like drew a huge blank. I was like, I actually don't know. And that's why I really think this question can be super beneficial to our relationships, because so often we don't feel appreciated, we don't feel loved, we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard. But do we even know what feeling seen or appreciated looks or feels like? The fact that I didn't have an immediate answer was like, ooh, Alyssa, this is an opportunity for you to sort of have these little check-ins with yourself and ask yourself this question, like, what helps you feel appreciated by Justin right now? And I do think it's fluid. I say right now because I think it changes. I think some seasons in life, we have different ways that we receive love than others. And, I had myself sit with it, and I told him, like, nothing comes to mind right now, but like, let me just think on this for a moment. And then I came up with a few things that I shared with him. Like, when he does these things, I just feel like warm and fuzzy. Like, it just brings me a lot of joy. Like, he does this thing where he places like his hand on my lower back, and when we're like out in public, or, which is so funny because I never think that I'm a personal touch person, but like there's something about that act that he does that just makes me feel like so seen and like safe and secure. And this then led to the conversation turning into him trying to communicate, like, I hope this doesn't mean that like I need you to make me lunch every day, and I thought that was a really beautiful reflection, because it's not that we want to put more pressure on our partners to do these things for us that we appreciate or help us feel appreciated. But what I try to explain to him is that, when I know that doing this one act, like filling your coffee cup when I know you've been in a meeting for a long time and your cup's been empty, and I notice, there's a little bit of coffee left, that's a simple act that maybe I don't clock and do every single day, but to know that that is a way that helps you feel good and helps you feel appreciated, I want to do that as a partner. Like, I desire to help you feel that way, not responsible for you feeling that way, but it's a way that I can show my appreciation and love. Just like what I try to tell him is like, that a clean kitchen helps me feel less anxious. That if I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed, the kitchen being clean is like my go-to to help me just regulate. And because that, sometimes you can tell when I'm overwhelmed and you'll clean the whole kitchen for me. I notice it, I clock it, and I appreciate that. And like, how does it feel when you do that for me when I'm overwhelmed? He's like, yeah, it feels really good to know that I can just like help you in that way. So I was like, yeah, that's like kind of what this, I think, conversation is about. It's not like, you don't make me feel appreciated, I need you to do these things to help me feel appreciated. It's, hey, I love our relationship. These are some ways that you show up for me that really mean a lot to me, right? And that's a different energy, I think. So we're going to take this concept of allowing there to be space, this concept of what's possible when you don't immediately go in to fill the space, into today, which is a podcast recording day, because we're here. I do podcast recording episodes on the days that I do Substack lives. So I'm sure you've noticed, like, every other week there's a podcast episode that is for paid subscribers only. It's a live that we do every other week over in the membership over on Substack. You're more than welcome to join live anytime. Like, everyone's allowed to join, even if you're not a paid subscriber. The replay is only for paid subscribers, so that's just the only difference. But the point here is that I record the Substack live with everyone, and then I record a podcast episode right after. So today I recorded the live, which was amazing. There were a lot of conversations that I think kind of relate to what we're talking about here now. And, Justin came out because I usually like let him know that I'm done recording, and then, like, he'll get water, go to the bathroom or whatever, and then I'll record this second episode. But he was hungry. It's like kind of lunchtime hour. he started making lunch and I was like, oh, are you going to make lunch? And you could tell, like, I could tell he was just hungry, the way that he responded in his tone. And so I was like, yeah, no worries. And then I figured I'll just eat lunch and then I'll record this episode. Well, here's what I noticed. I'm like trying to think of how I want to tell this story. What I noticed is I want to fill this space because I feel uncomfortable with his lack of communication, right? Like, we're not bantering, we're not really talking. I feel like I've upset him and I want to fill the space because I want to know that I haven't upset him, right? And so instead of going in and doing all of that, I asked him a question, are you hangry, to help understand his tone, and he said yes. And so I was like, that's all the information that I need. And now I'm just going to like let him do what he's doing, which is making himself lunch. I'm going to make myself lunch. Him eating is going to support his hanger, which is like his thing, not my thing. But my thing is I want to fill the space and like know that everything's okay between us, but that's my thing. So instead of making him responsible for that thing by filling the space and trying to get him to have a conversation with me when I now know that he's hangry, I'm going to sit with myself and ask myself the questions. What do I think filling the space with conversation is going to provide me with? Reassurance was the first thing that came to mind. And so I was like, okay, yeah, if he talks to me and if he tells me everything's okay, and if that he tells me he's not mad at me, then I can feel reassured that I'm not the problem, right? Putting all of that pressure on him when he's clearly communicated to me that he's basically not regulated. Like, I don't know if you've ever been hangry, but I'm not regulated when I'm hangry. And the last thing I want to do is take care of you and your stuff when I'm trying to take care of me and my stuff, right? And so I was literally sitting right there at my dining room table while he's making lunch, I'm making lunch, I'm sitting down, I'm starting to eat my lunch, and I'm asking myself these questions like, what are you making this space mean? It means that he's mad at me, he's angry with me, I did something wrong. Okay, what is filling the space going to provide you with? Reassurance. Okay, how can I provide myself with that reassurance right now? I can let myself know that I am safe, that space is safe, that Justin is resilient and capable of moving through this moment, and that this moment doesn't have to mean anything about me. Instead of amplifying this moment into being some big fight, how can I just allow us to both be in what we're in and just take responsibility for my part? And so I asked this part of me, what does she want? She wants reassurance. What does she need? Safety. How can I provide that for her right now? And it's just like reassurance, right? Letting her know that she is safe, that space does not have to equal something bad happening, that space doesn't have to equal, some sort of like conflict, fight, or rupture. And what ends up happening, because this is, I've literally could tell you guys a million times I've had this exact scenario play out in relationships. When we don't just take a moment to meet ourselves and what's coming up for us, meet ourselves in our own discomfort, and we make the other person responsible for meeting us in our discomfort in that moment, is we end up perpetuating the thing that we fear the most, which is conflict. Like in that moment, right? Like, I want to know that we're not in conflict. And so I seek out reassurance from him in a moment that he can't provide that for me because he's dysregulated, because he's hungry, right? And so, if we can start seeing how the thing that we fear the most is often perpetuated by our inability to just meet ourselves in our own discomfort, like if we can start doing that, I think it can absolutely shift our relationships. And it was a question that came up in today's live just before I started recording this. She's setting these boundaries, but her partner is experiencing some anxiety in those boundaries, her wanting to take some space when things feel heated, or just take some space for herself, and noticing her partner having big feelings about that, or spiraling when that comes up. And what I reminded her, because she was like, how, when you're in these codependent dynamics and the other person is codependent as well, like, how do you navigate, the codependent dynamic on the other person's end? And, I just reminded her, like, we have to come back to ourselves. When we're worried or thinking about the other person and them and their dynamic, we're avoiding meeting ourselves in our own. And so even just wanting them to be less anxious when you ask for space is literally trying to control an external experience, an external thing to help you feel less anxious, because you ultimately don't want to feel bad for asking for space. So their anxiety, you're making it mean something about you asking for space. And so the real work is not getting them to be less anxious. The real work is learning how to feel safe enough for them to be in their discomfort. So that's kind of like a little tangent, but something to kind of like wrap this whole thing, because it can show up in all these different ways where we're trying to control an external situation in order to provide an internal safety, right? Trying to change an external circumstance in order to provide an internal feeling that is more aligned to how we desire to feel. And when we can finally understand that the feeling that we seek, the way that we desire to feel, is dependent on us and how we're relating to the world around us, that's where empowerment comes in. That's when sovereignty comes in. So when you ask for space, for example, and they are anxious, can we turn it back around and say, how can I provide safety for myself to move through this moment where my partner is in discomfort? Just like I did with lunch today. My partner is upset, or sorry, he wasn't upset. He was hangry. My partner is hangry, and a part of me feels uncomfortable with his silence and wants reassurance. Instead of trying to seek it out from him and controlling the external environment by trying to get him to talk to me in a moment that is probably not ideal to talk, how can I provide myself with that reassurance, right, in that moment? And when I got to do that for myself, like, I'm grounded. I am settled. I feel safe. I feel in my body. Like, yes, there were those spiraling thoughts that came up, but I was able to meet them with curiosity and compassion. And instead of making him responsible for them and trying to take care of me in a moment that he really should be taking care of himself, like, we're both able to have this moment where we take care of ourselves, which is filling our own vessels. Like, he filled himself up by fueling himself, right? And I filled myself up with providing myself with internal safety. And now it'll be really interesting to see how we move through our day with us taking care of ourselves instead of trying to make the other person responsible for taking care of one another. I absolutely wanted to go into caretaker and be like, I'll make food for you. Like, let me do it. Let me try to help. But at the end of the day, like, that's taking away his autonomy and his sovereignty. If I did really want to help, because I don't think there's anything wrong with that, I think a better way to show up in that moment is like, I see you're hungry. Is there something I could do to help you right now? Right? Like, that would have been an option. And there wasn't like a reason why I didn't do that in the moment. I think I more so was just trying to stay like in my own, in my own lane. But that's totally like acceptable, especially if I think I didn't do it because I also realized I was going to take the opportunity to feed myself with that space. So I didn't have capacity to do more because I just needed to feed myself so I could now record this. But say I didn't have anything else to do this afternoon and I had a very free day and he was hangry and busy with work and I had the time, then I could just be like, hey, I've got tons of time. Do you want me to just make lunch for both of us? And then he could tell me like, yes, that'd actually be super helpful. Or he could say, no, I really wanted to make this. I have to make this food for me for the week anyways. And I would have been like, okay. I don't know why I felt like I needed to share that, but I think like there's always options, right? There's always all these ways that we can navigate and move through our relationships. But I think the biggest thing that I hope that you take away from this episode is that we don't have to fill the space, the part of you that feels the need to fill the space, can we ask that part of you what it thinks it will get by filling the space? And then what does that part of you want, and what does that part of you need? And can you now provide that to that part of you so that the other person in the relationship isn't responsible for filling that for you? All right. That's what I have for you guys today. This season is all about healing the mother wound and being seen. And so with that, I will leave a reflection for us. So if you're watching on Spotify, you can scroll down to the comments, or if you're watching on Substack, you can go to the comments of this post. And my invitation for us all is to ask ourselves, what do we believe we will get if we fill the space? What do we think it will provide us with? Another way that you can ask this question, not necessarily a part two, but another way that you can tap in if that one doesn't resonate, is, if I don't fill this space, what am I afraid will happen? If I don't fill the space, what am I afraid will happen? And just notice what comes up, and just notice what arises for you, and type it all out. Remember, like, it's so good to get it outside of you. Even if you don't hit send or post, that's totally fine. Just at least process it in front of yourself instead of just in your head. It's such a beautiful healing practice to somehow get it outside of us. And if you don't type it out, grabbing a journal and writing it out is beautiful too. But if you do feel called to hit post, it's always an honor to see your guys' shares and your reflections. And so you're always welcome to post it. And I love to respond to all of your guys' shares. So thank you so much for being open and willing to be seen in that. And yeah, we are now celebrating over 430 members in our codependency alchemy community over on Substack. So if you have ever had like a question that you want to directly ask me, or a situation that you're wanting feedback on, the membership is such a beautiful space to get that kind of support. I respond to everybody's questions every single day. And yeah, I love coming up with shadow work prompts for you guys, for your situations. I love guiding you through different questions, giving you guys resources to help you better understand your situation or offer you a new perspective. So if you feel like you're ready to take your healing to the next level, we've got a library of on-demand masterclasses that will just change your brain around how you relate to relationships, how you see relationships, and how you show up in them. And yeah, that's just like the, very tip of the iceberg of all of the resources that are inside of our membership over on Substack now. 3 years of growing like an archive of resources. There's a lot there to look at, to stick your teeth in, is that how you say it? Stick your teeth in? I don't know. You know what I mean. So if you're looking for a space, a community to do this healing in real time, definitely check out our codependency alchemy membership over on Substack. I'll leave the link below in the show notes or description box below. And if you haven't already rated the podcast and you listen to this regularly, one, thank you so much. You make this whole show possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you just leave a rating, it means the world to me. It helps me get this podcast in front of more people. I am like a solo person back here doing all the things, recording, editing, posting, and it means a lot, and it helps more than you know to just take a moment to leave an honest rating or review. So thank you. That's my ask. That's my favor. It means the absolute world to me, and I look forward to seeing you next week or inside the membership. Love you all so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.